So what are the key differences between a phone camera and a DSLR? We're going to go over those today. We're going to start with the smallest ones first and move to the largest, so be sure to stick around. Now, I do want to give the phone some credit here. You're able to do a lot of stuff on a phone that you're not able to do on an actual DSLR, but it's very limiting because of some other factors. But let's give credit where credit's due. Phones allow you to edit on things like Lightroom or Photomator. They allow for a compact, easy carry, slide out of your pocket and take a picture device. So I would like to give some bonus points to the phone for that. But when it comes to DSLRs, you get a range of features that you don't get with a phone that are much more important to crafting an image. So up first is your viewfinder. Now on DSLRs, this is going to be an optical viewfinder, and it's going to show you exactly what you're looking at, but it is going to give you the perspective of looking through your camera's eye. There's also going to be some settings in here while you're adjusting that you can see. But looking through a viewfinder gives a different feel to the picture that you're taking. It makes it feel more professional, more robust. The difference between the DSLR and mirrorless cameras is mirrorless are going to have an electronic viewfinder that, as you adjust settings, will also adjust the live picture view. Whereas on a DSLR, it's going to show you exactly what you're looking at through the lens. So with a DSLR, you will have to account for exposure adjustments and things like that, but it still gives a different feel than a phone camera. And then the touch-on settings: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Now, certain apps on phones will allow you to adjust these settings, but it's going to be a lot more advanced on a DSLR style camera. Settings like your aperture will make a bigger difference with subject separation or subject non-separation if you're shooting landscapes versus that of a phone camera. Now, shutter speed will also be a big factor on here, and typically cameras have a much faster shutter speed than those of phones. A lot of cameras can go up to 1/8000, which is pretty fast and allows you to fully freeze motion. So for sports or wildlife or anything that has fast motion, the DSLR or a mirrorless camera is almost a no-brainer. And finally, ISO. ISO is the sensitivity of the sensor to light. So with a DSLR style camera, these do have much bigger sensors and can essentially take in more light, allowing for less noise and higher dynamic range. Dynamic range is essentially the data that you're able to pull from an image, and it's 9 times out of 10 always going to be better on a DSLR versus on a phone camera. There's also the factor of lenses. So on DSLR style cameras, you can swap lenses based on what you're shooting. For example, we have a 40mm right here that's going to allow for a difference in the shooting style. Cameras do have a 1, a 2 times, typically a 0.5, and either a 3 or a 5 times zoom, but anywhere in between that is going to be digital zoom. And that is not a good thing, because the further you zoom in digitally, the less that you're going to have resolution out of an image. Whereas on DSLR style cameras, if you do buy a zoom, the zoom will be optical, so you're still getting the full resolution out of the sensor, and you can tailor which lenses you are using to what style of shooting you're doing. So wider lenses are typically good for landscapes, whereas telephotos are good for sports or for wildlife. Couple that with the fact that you can get huge zooms, which will allow you to punch in really far on things like wildlife, and you're going to get photos that basically look like you're right next to some of the birds or animals that you want to photograph. This also applies for sports. And now the biggest thing to factor in is sensor size. So what sensor size does is allow for a lot more dynamic range and a lot more subject separation. This is the sensor on your phone, and you can see it's very tiny. The sensor on this camera is actually in the mirror right here. There's a huge difference in size between the sensors of a phone versus a DSLR style camera. Larger sensor size not only increases the data that you're able to collect on an image, but also increases how much data you're able to pull from shadows and highlights, and how much you're able to edit a file. Another large factor between the DSLR and the phone camera debate is the computer processing that happens in a phone after you take a picture. Now, iPhone does allow for raw photos, but I do believe there is still some amount of processing that happens even with raw data. Whereas on a DSLR, you're getting what you get. All of that data has to be exported and put in things like Lightroom or Photomator or whatever other application that you decide to use to manipulate your photos. And while that can be a really good thing, phones make it a little bit easier for the average Joe to get a decent image. But someone that's trained and is able to manipulate their camera to the settings and the style that they want is always going to get a better image because of factors like subject separation, aperture, shutter speed, and even being able to use an external flash. Now, I'd like to hear your thoughts. They always say that the best camera is the one that you have on you. So a phone is something that we carry on us on a daily basis. It's never a bad thing to have, and you can get some really good images out of a phone camera. But the DSLR is going to give you a lot more professional images and images that have some more data, some more depth, and some more feel to them. Some little things that I like about shooting on an actual camera are things like the shutter. The body style, having this actual grip and shutter button that you can hold onto and grasp and feel. It doesn't give you the same effect when you shoot on a phone. I'd like to know your thoughts. What's your favorite device to shoot on? Do you like to use an actual camera, or do you like to use a phone, or do you utilize a mix of both? And if you learned something today, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow, and it makes me a little bit happy.